All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Placerville City Council meeting of October 25th. It's nice to see you here. I will call this meeting to order at 5 o'clock. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Ms. O'Connell, can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye. Thank you.
Here.
We are going to start the night with item 3.1. This is a ceremonial item, and it's to proclaim November 1st, 2022 as Extra Mile Day and to recognize 3 Extra Mile Day heroes for their significant contributions to the community. And I'll go ahead and read this proclamation and then introduce the 3 local heroes. A proclamation of the City Council of the City of Placerville declaring November 1st Extra Mile Day in the City of Placerville. Whereas the City of Placerville is a community which acknowledges that a special vibrancy exists within the entire community when its individual citizens collectively go the extra mile in personal effort, volunteerism, and service. And whereas the City of Placerville is a community which encourages its citizens to maximize their personal contributions to the community by giving of themselves wholeheartedly and with total effort, commitment, and conviction to their individual ambitions, family, friends, and community. And whereas the City of Placerville is a community which chooses to shine a light on and celebrate individuals and organizations within its community who go the extra mile to make a difference and lift up fellow members of their community. And whereas the City of Placerville acknowledges the mission of Extra Mile America to create 550 Extra Mile cities in America and is proud to support Extra Mile Day on November 1st, 2022. Now, therefore, I, Kara Taylor, Mayor of the City of Placerville, do hereby proclaim November 1st, 2022 to be Extra Mile Day. I urge everyone in the community to take time on this day to not only go the extra mile in his or her own life, but to also acknowledge all those who are inspirational in their efforts and commitment to make their organizations, families, community, country, or world a better place. And we have 3 organizations and people that we'd like to recognize tonight. And unfortunately, several of them are unable to attend. But
They're out doing good things.
they're out doing good things. So the first person that I'd like to recognize is John Sanders with the Old Town Grill for supporting so many local causes by generously feeding the nonprofit organizations and their supporters that do such great work for the community. He's unable to be here tonight because he is actually at a local fundraiser
Certainly
for
he is.
more.
For an award.
For more.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
And
We're
as
missing
our-
more tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as our city engineer, Rebecca Neves, likes to say, he's really the food angel. He attends basically, or participates in basically every local nonprofit fundraiser, providing food only at cost. And having been in the restaurant industry, I've got to say it's really hard to make things work charging full price. So the amount that he gives to the community is just that much more appreciated. I know how hard it is, and he's everywhere that nonprofits are having their fundraisers, and it's really something. So
Can I add one thing?
go for it.
Okay. I just wanted to add one thing in that I have John is a very personal friend of mine, and and a great guy. And one of the things that is so unique about him is that he hires and brings in people from all walks of life, gives them a lift up, a hand up, and has given people opportunities that they might not have otherwise had. And he is just, there's a lot of good people in this community, and he's right up at the top of the best. So.
Thank you, Dennis. That's a great additional point. The second person I'd like to recognize tonight is David Zielinski. And I'd like to recognize him for his many years of service to the community, caring for veterans and advocating for fire safety and home hardening. After the Paradise Fire, David Zielinski was among a small handful of citizens that banded together to establish the Placerville Fire Safe Council, and he's been a very active member ever since, educating homeowners about home hardening and working to bring resources to the community for defensible space. And he's also worked to connect veterans in need with services for many years. So he's in Portugal right now with his family. Yes. So unfortunately, he's not here to accept this. But it's a pleasure to recognize him. And then I would like to recognize Housing El Dorado and Maureen Dion Perry and Frank Porter. And Frank Porter is here tonight. And I'd like to recognize Housing El Dorado and Frank and Maureen for tirelessly working to bring together stakeholders, advocates, government, and the housing insecure to develop solutions to affordable housing and homelessness. You know, when I started on the council several years ago, the homeless advocates were a really loose, kind of unorganized band of people that would often attend the city council meetings to yell at us. If you remember those days. And a lot has changed in those 4 years. And Housing El Dorado and the work that Frank and Maureen has done especially, but I've got to say, there's so many people, both on the Fire Safe Council and on Housing El Dorado and in all these organizations that I wish I could recognize, but I could only choose a couple. But, Frank and Maureen they've worked so hard, they basically treated this like a full-time job to bring these people together, to improve relations with the homeless advocates and government and service providers. And I feel like we're finally at a point of making progress, and a lot of work's gone into making that happen. And I don't think it could have happened without Housing El Dorado. So Frank is here to accept this, so step on up. I'd like to invite you to say any words that you would like to on behalf of Housing El Dorado. And I'll come down and present this certificate to you.
Well, thank you. We're honored for this recognition, and on behalf of Maureen, who is out of town visiting her brother on the East Coast, I want to thank you all. And also on behalf of our board of directors and all of our volunteers, we have a very incredible group of volunteers who help us and support our work. And I also want to thank this council for you in embracing our work and working with us on a number of projects, and we look forward to more of that getting done in the future. There's a lot of coalition building or community building and weaving things together, and we will continue doing that work, and we certainly appreciate the council's support of that work. So thank you very much.
All right, hang on one second, Frank, and I'll come on down. All right, are there any comments from council?
I just want to thank our volunteers. I mean, this is really what makes our community so special. We have so many people who volunteer in so many different areas and just really make Placerville a great place.
I've said it, I don't know how many times before, but if it weren't for volunteers, our city would fall apart. And I add my thanks too.
All right, I'd like to open this item up to the public. If anyone would like to speak on 3.1, please step on up to the podium at this time.
Nobody's going to step up. What a great idea. Thank you.
All right, I will close public comment. Thank you again to Frank Porter for being here tonight, and to all of our volunteers for all the hard work that they do in our community. It's really an honor to be able to recognize people for what they do. Moving on to closed session report with City Attorney Ibrahimi.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor and members of the council. The council did meet in closed session tonight pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.95. The claimant was Hernandez Orozco. There was no public comments in advance of closed session, and the council provided direction to staff.
All right, thank you. Item 5, adoption of the agenda.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? None. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item 6, announcements and presentations to the public. Start with you, Jackie. Okay. Michael?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Patty?
Well, I attended several dinners, and they were just really fantastic. They honored folks that needed to be thanked, et cetera. It was the Arts Council, the Shakespeare Club, the Foundation. By the way, I read your proclamation it was a Shakespeare Club, so I read it for you.
Thank you.
And I also would like to say that I'm for the Save the Graves, I'm part of the board. And it was a successful weekend, and I just really want to thank everybody that turned out. We've got a lot of work to do, a lot of funds to raise to really help that cemetery up there, but it was a success. So
Patty, are they going to be doing anything else throughout the year, like
we're
other
going to
types
try,
of events?
and we're open for suggestions. The one we put on is costly, so we're trying to figure out things that we can do that maybe not quite so much overhead. So, yeah, if anybody's got any suggestions, we're open for it.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Patty. Dennis?
So I went to, the Arts Council had a recognition dinner for Bill Roby, and that guy has done a lot of amazing things in our community. Has pulled a lot of people together from all different factions. He's a great convener and thinker, and he has a lot of big plans for our community foundation for the future. And I can't remember how much they celebrate, how many millions of dollars they've given back to the community, but it's a large amount.
Amazing. And
their endowment that they continue to grow. It's just, it is gaining more momentum, and it's snowballing, and it's really exciting to watch it. And they celebrated his efforts and his contributions to this community, and I'd like to continue passing that goodness along, because he has done a great thing there. Save the Graves was very cool. Hopefully we can save some more. One of the things that they have done recently is they have fixed some of the graves, but which not to the standard that they want, but they have fixed some of the headstones by some very skilled people putting them back together, and some of the ones that are broken there.
And each one of those costs over $1,000 just to do the framing, just to do what we did.
Yeah, it's a lot. And our cemeteries, and Save the Graves is really about cemeteries, and it's about honoring those that have come before us and that are laying there in the ground, and respecting the cemeteries.
Placerville history.
Yeah, our history, and they're not being maintained, and there's little to no funding for this, and so, as you think about organizations and things you would like to help, it seems it's a little hard to give money to Save the Graves when there's so many people alive that could use the things, but it's also a matter of respect out of those that have come before us. And so I really encourage people, when they look at the opportunity to give, a little bit goes a long way with those guys. Winnie and I supported them a whole lot over the last couple of years just to help them along, and I think that it's a worthwhile thing to do. And then, what was the other thing? Save the Graves.
The Arts Council.
The Arts.
Did you go to that?
Yes, and then there was the foundation dinner. There was a lot of things. The El Dorado Community Foundation put on a dinner,
right,
and recognizing some people and honoring those in the community that have given so much back to the community. And we were fortunate enough to have an invitation to go and help celebrate those people. One of the people that was recognized, Katie Peak, was one of those that was recognized for her.
She established the Women's Foundation.
She did, yes, and she's a founder of what is it?
She was on. She did help.
She was a founder
Exactly.
of El Dorado Community Foundation, so she's a huge contributor, and she's been a great part of giving back to our community. That was a long thing, but it was important to recognize those people in our community. Thank you.
True. I unfortunately missed a lot of those community dinners because my youngest came down with that RSV that's been going around,
really?
and yeah, we had a very, very rough week with a very high fever. So I was sad to miss a lot of those great events. I do want to announce that Placerville Drive received $15.5 million grant. This is incredibly exciting for the city. It's a huge accomplishment, and I really want to thank Rebecca Neves and our engineering department and EDCTC and Dewberry Engineers and REY Engineers for all of their hard work to put together a really great grant application. This is going to add bike lanes and sidewalks to Placerville Drive. It's enough funding to have a really transformative project for this corridor that really needs active transportation and connectivity. And I'm so excited that happened. It's just such a huge accomplishment. So thank you and congrats. And then I just want to, ballots are in the mail. I want to remind everybody to vote. And I'm not going to, say who to vote for or anything like that up here on the dais, but I do want to just give a little perspective about a couple of issues that I've been thinking a lot about, and I would like to encourage voters to think about these things as well. The first thing that I think is kind of off of the public's radar, as I look around this room of city leadership, I see 2 to 3 people that will be leaving us probably in the next 4 years to well-deserved retirements. And with them, we will be losing decades of institutional knowledge and memory. And, the voters may want to think about offsetting some of that loss by, choosing candidates that have institutional knowledge and memory of the community. Another thing that I think about a lot is the state of the economy. This last year, we have really enjoyed a windfall of discretionary funding, which is unusual. It's been so nice to be able to buy things for the city that we've needed for a long time, that we've deferred for a long time. Next year, it's not looking like that's going to be the case. And I remember from earlier budgets, when budgets are tight and there's not really enough to fund the current levels of service, you have to make really hard choices, and campaign promises go out the window. And we need leaders that are open-minded enough to really look at all of the options that might be on the table, and also confident enough in their judgments to make hard calls when the time comes to do so. Not to be alarmist, things are looking fine right now, but every day it seems a little bit more precarious. So, and then lastly, I think everyone's aware that these last couple of years, we've seen an increase in divisiveness and negativity. And I've really felt like it's our responsibility on the council to model respectful civil discourse. And it's something that I've taken very seriously. I really feel so grateful to have served with all of you because you've also taken that very seriously. And I appreciate that. And I just hope, and I have a lot of faith in the voters of Placerville who continue to send us good people. But I hope that the next council will take that responsibility as seriously. So.
I forgot something in my speech. You're going to be saying goodbye for the next
I know.
5 meetings, or 3 meetings, however many left. But
I think we have 2 more, Dennis. But who's counting?
I hate to jump in at the end of that, but I forgot something on my thing, and I need to check, because I've had several questions about what's been happening with the post office and where we have landed with that. And so I asked, I checked in with Cleve to find out exactly, what's the real answer and where we landed with that. So if you, Cleve, do you mind sharing?
So just kind of a timeline I will go through. On July 12th, this came before the council for consideration to rename the Placerville Post Office. Following that meeting, the council asked to send a letter to Congressman McClintock's office that we could meet and talk about and discuss how we might move forward, whether it's with that or something else, whatever it may be. That letter was sent on the 18th, and we got a response back from them that they wanted to meet. We were scheduled to meet on the 22nd, or on the 25th, excuse me. However, on the 22nd, we received a phone call from Congressman McClintock's office saying they were wanting to cancel the meeting. They decided not to meet, and then followed by an email that said that in discussions with the family, they had decided that they were not going to move forward with that, with the renaming of the post office, and therefore at that point it became, to me, a non-issue. They weren't pursuing it any further. And so although the council had asked us to bring it back in August, we did not bring it back because it was no longer an issue before the council. So that's where it's been left at this point. There's been no more really conversation. I have had conversations actually with Congressman McClintock's office regarding the cleanup at the post office, and I have noticed some of that has been happening. So we really appreciate his work and his office's work in that area. So,
All right. Thank you.
So, real quick question, what you just said. I go to that post office all the time, and yes, they are cleaning up, but boy, there's a lot more could be done. And I don't want to drop it. I mean, I'm going to be leaving the council, but I would like to stress that you guys really keep on top of them, because it's just a shame. I mean, it's the United States Post Office.
Yeah.
And it's just a shame that they have to keep being reminded. I mean, they should be on a maintenance schedule as far as I'm concerned. They're an entity that serves the public, and I just think it should be kept up all the time, not wait for us to complain. And then they go up and trim a few bushes and rake the leaves, and that's about all that seems to be getting done. And I just think that we ought to, really force them to, whatever we can do. I don't know, that's probably not the right word. We can't force them to do anything, but just really, do more maintenance with that.
Yeah.
It's just not right.
Well, Congressman McClintock's office has encouraged me to let them know if there's more issues. So we will continue to work with them.
Maybe we should ask them to put it on So.
I do have a late breaking thing here that I wanted to announce. I just saw a text, and that's the El Dorado County Fire Safe Council is pleased to announce they have officially reopened their defensible space program as of October 24th of this month. They are currently accepting up to 120 new applications on a first-come, first-served basis. They'll be notifying the community once they have reached capacity. And you can find more information on the Defensible Space Assistance Program at edcfiresafe.org. Again, it's edcfiresafe.org. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Michael. You gave some of my report. That's good, though. I'm glad you read it. Thank you.
All right. So we'll go ahead and we'll close item 6.1 and move on to the consent calendar. For this item, all matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion by roll call vote unless any member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion. I will open the consent calendar up to public comment at this time. If anyone would like to comment on 7.1 through 7.8, please step on up to the podium. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council.
I have one comment on 7.7, and that I was just looking into it and noticed that we're spending $25,408 on engineering support service for construction of Placerville Station 2 Phase 1 project, and I was curious as where the funding was coming from, and it was all built into the project as part of it. But we are hiring outside support to support our engineering staff as part of the project, so that they can get on with taking care of our other roads and things in the city. So. that funding is coming from within the project. Yeah, thank you.
All right.
I'll make a motion to move the consent calendar.
So second?
We have a first and a second. Can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Thank you. All right, this brings us to item 8, public comment. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject jurisdiction of the city council. Please state your name voluntarily. It's just nice to connect names and faces, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. If you would like to step up to the podium, now's the time to do so.
Good evening, City Council and Mayor. I'd like to say thank you to Terry Zeller for all the work that he has done with the Growlersburg crew and the much better condition that our creek is in now. It has really improved. I think a fish could now swim in it instead of fighting its way between the little sticks of brush. And it's a lot more fire safe because if you don't think a creek can burn, I can show you some that have. So it's really nice to see that getting cleaned up. So thanks to Terry and the Growlersburg crew, things are looking better.
Thank you, Sue.
Good evening. My name's Max Storton. I'm a resident of Placerville. I live at the intersection of Spring, Bedford, Union, and Highway 50, which is an interesting intersection. In the mornings during the spring and summer, I'm often in the garden, which faces right onto Spring Street. I'm also at one end of the Spring Street renovation project, which was one of the first projects of, I believe it's L&M measure funds raised by sales tax dollars to improve and fix the roads of Placerville. You might say I have a front row seat. In December of 2021, I noticed large-scale traffic jams happening due to construction trucks and that were being parked and blocking the intersection. This went on for several weeks, particularly during the start of school and the end of school. Traffic was very heavy. So I went to City Hall and I spoke to Pierre Rivas to say and inquire why what was going on with the encroachment permits, and found out that there were no encroachment permits. And actually, there were no construction permits either. So I went, that's strange. At that time, sorry, my vision isn't so good, so I can lose track.
Max, would you mind lowering the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry. My vision is not so good, so sometimes I can't see when I'm looking at it. Oh, okay. So I also inquired at that time when the Spring Street project would be completed, with curbs being painted red and the crosswalk being painted, as it had been obliterated during the construction. I was told to speak with Rebecca Neves about the painting. Pierre also thanked me for reporting this, and this as the city would not be aware unless residents reported such matters. He said to keep him or Diane Palmer updated if I saw any more construction. I did speak with Rebecca Neves around that time and was informed that the crosswalk would not be returning, as it was not legal, because it would have to be an ADA compliant crosswalk, and the city did not have the money to do this. I'm not going to, this I think is 3 minutes because I timed it up to now. So I won't continue with this. I will be back next meetings, and this will probably take at least several months. I also left a copy of an email that many of the senior people in the city have received, but I gave her 4 copies to go to the 4 people other than the mayor, because the mayor has seen this already. And the mayor also did write me and say that she would be talking with the city manager and get back to me. That has not happened. And so I will continue and bring it to the council and give you the detail of what has happened. You can have a look at the email. Also, one should go to the city attorney. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for your service. I really do appreciate all the work you put in.
Thank you, Mac.
Good evening, Leo Bennett Cochon. Tonight I would like to comment on the recent incursion of National Extreme partisanship into our local politics. Unfortunately, these kinds of incursions have been promoted by the National MAGA Party. Now apparently this effort has been promoted by one of our local representatives to Congress. My specific concern is a political mailer that all Placerville residents received last week, including my friends and family. This mailer was paid for by a local Congress member. How to address the big lies that are a part of extreme partisanship is an ongoing challenge. As has been observed, lies are easy to start and spread quickly. The truth is both harder and slower to discern. However, at times it feels like refuting lies can give unwarranted attention, which might be the purpose of those seeking to divide us. I would like to encourage council members to review the resources at a website called Not in Our Town. This organization has put a lot of thought and energy over decades to develop tools to assist communities in increasing the positive and decreasing the negative. In my experience, more truth is a good approach to lies. Perhaps another candidate forum could be scheduled next week. This would allow all the candidates to unify in a rejection of the apparent incursion by one of our local congressional representatives. In addition, such a forum would provide an opportunity to unite in support of commitment to positive politics going forward. If you need an organizer, thank you.
Thank you, Leo.
I'll take us extra 10 minutes. Kirk Smith, Placerville. Just to follow up on my comments from before, this will be part 3. I wanted to make it clear that everybody I've ever known connected with the Chamber of Commerce, which would be both business members and staff, are all competent, honest, competent people, good people. The concern is about competition, about that thing that people business are all about, competition. And that's the way it should be. That's the suggestion. So what I wanted to suggest is that I've never known of a Chamber of Commerce anywhere in the world that supports sales tax increases, but ours does. And I've never figured out what business interest is there to support something that's extraordinarily unpopular, like the roundabout years ago at the exchange, or to move the Druids Monument. But the answer is what those things have in common is this what city government wants. Oh, but that's also the same government that turns around and approves them getting money. That's why it should be separate, because of appearances. It has that inside incestuous kind of relationship, more symbiotic. The last thing to add is with the Chamber, there's one person who's truly exceptional, and that's Kathleen Dodge. You get more bangs for the buck with what they do for film promotion than anything else. Films are extraordinarily powerful. We have people going up to Lake Tahoe to see a nondescript small airport just because they want to see where Tom Cruise filmed Maverick, or go to an old 1950s mansion because it reminds them of the film The Godfather. And my prediction is that come December, you're going to have people in Placerville go because of a low-budget, crazy horror film just to see how this gold mining town was converted into some Sleepy Hollow southern town in the midst of winter. So it does have an impact that lasts longer than all the magazine articles and newspaper articles that wind up on recycling bins. So that's something to look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk. All right, last call. Don't be shy.
I've been called many things, but not shy recently. Jonathan Gainsborough, 30-year Placerville resident, very grateful to live in one of the best towns in America and the heart of the gold rush. It doesn't take Sherlock Holmes to know what I'm going to speak about, because I've been here to over 90% of the meetings of the city council and the county supervisors over the last three and a half years. I'm looking forward, and I believe we're making progress toward being comfortable when we bring up the subject of the homeless. When I had to mention a nationally known civil rights attorney to bring up the Martin Boise issue, when the homeless were going to be moved off of public property by our unconstitutional anti-camping ordinance about 3 years ago, it was wonderful that that didn't become a litigational issue. And now Martin Boise is just like turning a faucet, because it's just part of the law of the land that you cannot criminalize the homeless for being homeless, nor can they be moved from public property or even sleeping on a sidewalk if there's no beds made available. I just want to remind us all that our governor does boast about a $50 billion with a B billion-dollar surplus. So even though we may be tightening our belts, the grants are still out there. I want to commend the city that you have really led the county in getting off the dime and moving toward a year-round navigation center. We're looking at the opening of the former juvenile hall on January 15th. But between now and January 15th, the temperature for one of my friends that I picked up for church, he is a Christian. He's one of those that Jesus said, inasmuch as you do it to the least of these, my brethren, in Matthew 25, you've done it unto me, or inasmuch as you didn't do it for one of the least. 2 weeks before, 2 people from the Hill came to church. There's more than that, those that are Christians there, and I just want to encourage us all. Let's do what it takes for the county as well to step up between now and January 15th. It was 41 degrees on Sunday night on the Hill on Broadway. None of us have ever slept in that temperature. And none of us, no human being ever should, especially in Placerville. With 3 seconds left, let's get a shelter somewhere, somehow, please, for Jesus' sake and for our own humanity's sake. Let's get something over them until the Navigation Center opens. God bless you for your good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Hi, I'm Sean Briggs. Main thing I wanted to check was with all of the Trip to Green data that's being collected, who's in charge of collecting it, what baselines were collected before we started it, how is the data analytics being handled? Did we have baselines for the weekends in the 3 months leading up to when we were doing it? Did we collect weekend-specific data for each of the weekends involved, both when it was going on and in between the test periods? And is all of the businesses within the downtown area being included? Because if we're not including everybody in the data collection, then the analytics are honestly worthless. So I just wanted to find out how that was being handled, who was handling it, when that raw data would be available to the public, and just make sure that all of those factors were being accounted for, particularly in the terms of the baseline, whether you're going from the perspective of the current fiscal year, comparing the side-by-side weekends, or whether you're going with the previous year's fiscal year's data and checking what the variance is between the previous year and the current year, and applying that to project what the weekend sales would be. So anyways, I look forward to the information. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I will close public comment. Rebecca, would you like to answer those questions about, I'm sure you look like you want to answer that.
It's at whatever the discretion the council would want.
Yeah, go ahead. I know this is an important issue for a lot of people, so.
Yeah, so no secret, I'm an engineer. I love data, so I can't geek out enough on this subject. God help you, Sean. So the data that we're collecting is a lot, and it's not just us that's collecting it. It is Caltrans. And because it's such an enormous amount between all the ITS data that they have on system, which on system is basically the highway, it takes a while to pull out that data and truncate it. That's what they're currently doing right now. We anticipate, they have their own workload of stuff too, but we anticipate getting that first blush raw data in about 3 to 4 weeks. We currently have a community survey out, so if I want to make sure that I'm kind of capturing some of the highlighting options. So as far as the baseline for the weekends, the perspective of the current fiscal year or the previous fiscal year data, and are we applying the variances? Yes to all of that, actually. We are comparing before the pandemic, during the pandemic. I mean, we have decades of data to collect as far as volume, and it gets translated into what's called a heat map. And the heat map is what shows where the blips or the jumps in traffic are. And, I mean, so if you look at this heat map, you'll actually see a focus around, Sunday afternoons. I mean, it's a big jump of traffic and everything else. The other thing, too, is we're pulling and we're looking at the anomalies. For example, on Friday, people go to Tahoe or go to Apple Hill. On Saturday, people go to Tahoe or Apple Hill. On Sunday, we have a significantly higher volume of traffic coming back because people are going up to Tahoe different days. So that traffic is dispersed over 2 peak times, and then the return is a bigger peak. The other thing we're looking at, too, is not just the data of the cars that are coming through, but where they're coming from. So 93% of the vehicles that travel on Highway 50 during the weekends are out of town, meaning Sacramento or further away. The other part of this, too, is during the week, 91% of the cars that travel through US 50 are not residents either. So this is all some pretty, like baseline data that we've been capturing, and so we will kind of look at that data again once we get the more recent data. As far as who's compiling it, there's a whole host of folks. We have 2 different consultants, and we have Caltrans and city staff is working on it, as well as county staff. The other really cool thing that we're doing as far as data compilation is we're actually doing visual data compilation. The county has been so supportive and generous. Their survey department is actually, they flew the project during Trip to Green weekends and on non-Trip to Green weekends, so we can have that stark visual contrast and comparison of what that looks like. The other thing that we were tracking was the preemption. The preemption is emergency vehicle conveyance and things like that through the intersections. So there's a lot of data. And then the other part is, are we including everyone in the process? Absolutely. And including everyone, in my mind, also includes meaning Broadway and Placerville Drive businesses as well. We've generated a merchant-only survey that is going to go directly to the merchants in all 3 of the main, commercial corridors. So we're talking Placerville Drive, Main Street, and Broadway, and we will be collecting that data directly from those merchants. We have already received 353 Trip to Green community survey responses as well. So it's a lot, and I'm honestly really looking forward to presenting it.
So 3 to 4 weeks before it's compiled in a way that's available to the public, or is it going to take a little bit longer?
It takes a little bit longer. And the other thing, too, that we're going to be doing is we have several public workshops coming up. We have one in December and another one in January. One is in person and one is virtual, just so we can make sure we capture everybody, too. You know, when this first initial, I would say, restart of public outreach, because you may recall in 2019 we had actually quite a few public meetings around this under what was the public outreach effort for the hotspot study. And I will not get too much into the weeds of that because this is not an agendized item. And and so you know, that part of the data will actually come to light as well, because at that public meeting we couldn't build according to public input, we couldn't build a bypass fast enough, which was a surprise to all of us, to be honest. So we've been heading in that direction. We did have virtual community meetings as well during the hotspot study outreach. So,
okay.
Yeah, there's been a lot of data.
Okay, great. So where can people access the survey? Is it on EDCTC's website?
We have it posted on social media. We're actually going to do a repost of it on Monday, too, just to kind of make sure that we give another push and capture as much as we can. It closes on the 7th of November.
Okay.
Can I?
Let me ask one more question.
Oh, go ahead.
So just to kind of wrap it up, is it safe to assume that this information will be put out in front of the public? There will be adequate amount of time for the public to digest it, to get to know it, before any decisions are made about if we're going to move forward with this long term?
Oh, yeah. We actually have a report that is going to be generated and issued and presented to the El Dorado County Transportation Commission, and we're looking at either the March or April commission meeting. And then what we do is we actually have plenty of time to think about it, because we don't have any trip to Greens planned after this. And so that will be where we say, okay, well, now that we have all this information, we can all collectively digest it and figure out what it looks like to move forward or do nothing. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then Dennis?
Oh, is it, the only question I had, is it only on social media?
No, I believe it's on the EDCTC website, but I will verify that.
Okay. Do we have it on our website as well?
I'll have to double check.
Or a link, I think it would be
At
good.
the very least, if we don't, it will be up before the end of the meeting.
Okay.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Rebecca.
You're welcome.
Rebecca, just thank you for saying that. You know, I know sometimes this gets confusing, but we actually do have businesses on Broadway and on Placerville Drive too. So it's a totality of all those things put together. So thank you.
Yeah.
Anytime.
All right. 8.2, written communication. Do we have anything, Regina?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We will skip 9, 10, and 11 because we have no items under there, and move on to item 12, discussion items, and 12.1. This is a multi-item item here regarding the buildings at 487, 489, and 525 Main Street. And Mr. Morris has the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So, as you know, in 2019, the city received a reuse proposal for 487, 489 Main Street, better known as either Ketchup and Mustard or Old City Hall, Historic City Hall, for perspective, so you know where we're at. We awarded that proposal to Arts and Culture El Dorado. Subsequent to that, we also, or actually prior to that award, we had actually entered into an agreement with Arts and Culture to, on a temporary basis, to use the historic buildings for both offices and for gallery space. And they did that for a couple of years. As we started working with them, and more significantly over the last year, to look at the buildings and start that process, we've been negotiating an agreement or a memorandum of understanding with them for the process. We brought in additional engineers to look at it. As you recall, at one point we prepared to do the roof, ran into some concerns with that, and determined we needed to shore up the west wall of the historic buildings in order to feel safe about putting someone on the roof, an extra weight going on the roof for that project. We did that, and then during that process, we also began talking to engineers, structural engineers, about the building and how we were going to move forward. And those structural engineers in their reviews suggested that we needed to take another hard look at the buildings and the safety of them, and suggested that we do a review with our building official and look at how how we wanted to proceed, and if those buildings were even safe at that point to occupy on a temporary basis. The building official came back to us and said, after his review of all the documentation that was there and a physical review of the buildings, he recommended that, not recommended, but issued a memo stating that revoking the occupancy permit for those buildings and saying that we should not occupy those. We notified Arts and Culture El Dorado, and they have been out of the buildings since that time, and I apologize to them. So they've basically been out of a home for a little while, but we have still been working with. We've had several meetings with them since that time. As a result of that, though, we began discussions of how can we accommodate and help move forward with this process. And we looked at, as you know, recently we were over a year ago now, we were able to obtain 525 Main Street as part of this process also. And so we looked at, could that potentially become a place for Arts and Culture El Dorado to temporarily stage. And I want to mention that we had already had discussions with them that during the construction process of Historic City Hall, they likely would not be able to be in the building. So we would need to look at a different place for them anyway. So moving them to 525 Main Street during that time would have made sense, and it, for various reasons, as has been mentioned, has come up sooner than what we thought it might be, and that requires them to leave that building. So with that, I started reviewing with my staff and looking at what needed to be done. Was 525 Main Street in a condition that could be occupied? And we reviewed that and found some things that needed to be done that we felt, since we had required them to move out of Historic City Hall, we felt there was somewhat our obligation to make those, do some improvements in there to make the buildings in a condition that they could put their offices in there. So we worked with a local contractor and did some improvements in there. And the first item we're asking you to approve tonight is to ratify a construction contract that I approved for $20,450 for those improvements that were done to the building in order to make it suitable for office and gallery space within the building. In order to do that, there's two actions that need to take place, and we're recommending that that $20,450 be liquidated from funding that you had set aside for the roof replacement on Historic City Hall, and then it be allocated, actually ARPA funds, and that be allocated to this project for 525 Main Street. So that's the first piece of this. The second piece is how do we move forward now with Historic Main Street, Historic City Hall, 487, 489 Main Street. And so we put together a plan with our structural engineers and the architect of how we can move forward with this. And the first recommendation is to perform a stabilization investigation, which they will look into and determine the safety of all the walls and make sure that for the further investigation and construction work that would occur moving forward to retrofit and renovate the buildings, that it is safe. And so they have provided a proposal for that service in the amount of $27,730 to do that investigation. Again, we're taking that funding out of that, at this point, out of that roofing funding that you had allocated through the ARPA funding. Once that investigation is complete, we don't, and they don't inspect it. It'll be a lot of work, but there may be a little bit of work to stabilize the walls prior to moving on to the next phase of the study, which is a renovation or a retrofit investigation, which will determine the actual process and cost to retrofit the building and make it completely, at least the external part of the building, safe. It doesn't include the TI improvements, the tenant improvements that would go on inside. But it does secure the building for the long term in terms of the exterior walls and how we can move forward with it. We don't have a cost for that yet, and we want to get through the stabilization investigation and that work done first. And in fact, that has to be done before they can begin the retrofit investigation. So what I'm asking you for tonight is ratification of the contract with Design Smith Contractors, who did the work in 525 Main Street. Second is to liquidate the funding from the Historic City Hall roof replacement project in the amount of $20,450, and then approve a budget appropriation from the ARPA fund for 525 Main Street tenant improvements in the amount of $20,450. And then finally is to authorize me to enter into an agreement with Architectural Nexus, who is the architect on Historic City Hall, working with Arts and Culture El Dorado and the city to perform the stabilization investigation on 487 and 489 Main Street. And I think that's it at this point. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Did you say that one?
I did not say the last one, but I will mention, I've also put in here, direct the city manager to negotiate a lease agreement with Arts and Culture El Dorado for use of 525 Main Street. That is in process already. We've been working on that since they were removed from Historic City Hall. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Cleve?
Cleve, and I apologize for doing this to you, but but I'll do it anyways. Can you just go just side by side again, because I want to underscore this for the public, just the difference between the stabilization and then the next phase. Just
sure.
You don't have to go through the whole thing, but I just really want to do a side by side comparison again and talk exactly what we're being asked tonight to fund.
Sure, I can do that. Let me find the right page, because I want to make sure I do it accurately here. I've got a page from a description from the engineer that defines it. So here we go.
This one?
Yeah, no, this one. All right, the stabilization phase, this is from the engineer. We have recommended that the first priority is to complete the building stabilization investigation. We will need to complete our general observations on the balance of the structures and specifically verify the wall support of the existing trusses. This will provide us data to complete the lateral load path assumed in the design of the west wall shoring system. This will also address the overall safety of the building to accomplish testing and construction tasks. From a contracting standpoint, this likely means adding some steel ties at the roof and floor levels to connect the structures at the center demising wall, hoping the roof and floor diaphragms have some capacity without adding plywood. The big goal is to allow roof access for roofing repairs prior to winter rains. That was at that point. The second piece will be the retrofit investigation. The building has not been examined or tested to inform the design of the retrofit. The previous study involved some visual observation, but was short of really how bad in engineering terms to produce a repair design. Let me skip this part. This step involves examination of brick elements, mortar, stone, masonry, and layup. Testing for brick is horizontal jacking for shear stress values and pull testing of epoxy anchors. The rock walls are much more tricky as they do not have the header coursing to tie the wall together like the brick wides, and rely on integrity of the mortar to hold the assembly together. This may require some out-of-plane shear testing using airbags or jacks. We will consult with a qualified testing lab for this test. So that's the difference. Does that answer?
Yeah, no, and I really wanted, and thank you. But I'm glad you did that, because I really wanted to show the public exactly what this all entails, right. The amount of work that's going to go into this. I mean, these obviously are sort of the crown jewels, if you will, of Placerville in terms of some of our historic elements that we have in town. But it is a lot of work. It is a lot of money that's going to be going into these things. So I just, as we go forward, I just want to really put a spotlight on those so people really understand what it all entails and the level of expertise that's needed in order to do these things as well. So thank you.
And just to clarify too, we're paying tonight, we're being asked to approve funding for the stabilization phase, not yet the retrofit investigation. That will come after, assuming that the
Get some
stable.
numbers.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct. If we can afford it, right?
Correct.
So, okay. Any other questions at this time? I'll open this item 12.1 up for public comment. If anyone would like to step up to the podium, please feel free to do so now.
First, Leo Bennett Cushon, I'd like to commend, as was well said, the council for polishing, refurbishing Crown Jewels. My mother attended an historic high school in Southern California at Albrecht, and unfortunately, only Ivy held it up, and they ended up deciding it was just too expensive. And it was quite a loss. I mean, it's one of those things, and it's great if you can keep it. I'm just, for the record, trying to clarify the different uses. I'm looking at the Mountain Democrat, who doesn't always get it right, April 23rd, where they said that Arts and Culture helped buy the 525 because they intended to use it, and that they provided the purchase price to the city, and that ultimately they hope to be able to use it for a museum that focuses on education. I'm sorry, wrong one. They want to focus on education as well as agri-tourism and maybe have a rooftop garden. All great things that speak to me. Don't know if those plans are solid, if it's going to change. And, I made a comment to somebody. You guys are great in terms of the cultural divide, putting two opposite entities, one that really has a certain perspective that's not really into art and wine, like they call it, and maybe that'll be serendipity where people learn, because sometimes if you can't talk together, maybe you can learn to work together, and maybe they'll go to the graves, because that should be a common ground there. So thank you so much for preserving the Crown Jewels.
Thank you, Leo.
Good evening, Kirk Smith. The Arts and Culture Group does phenomenal work and always has. It's been a very important part, vital part of this community from its very beginnings. The Empire Theater existed roughly in the same spot it is now in 1850. Obviously, it was not filmed then. It was local live performances. Later, there was a Secret Opera House that was located just this side of the restaurant near the bell tower. My grandmother was among the others who participated for live performances of all kinds. So culture has always been an important part of here, long before we had taxes and it was all financed privately. So I encourage it. It's to be encouraged, but my questions have to do about the building because all of you knew or should have known at the time you entered into the lease that most of the building was not habitable. How do you know? Because that's what the report said. That was done at a cost of about $30,000 for an engineer that was brought in because the previous contract to sell it had to be taken apart, rescinded because that problems wasn't fully disclosed. So you knew the problems were there, and all these costs about the expertise and special work that's going to be required now was all described a number of years ago in this room. I heard it described by people who've had personal experience doing restoration work of that kind. There's all kinds of reasons why you need to clear up how this group would have how many buildings, and whether it's going to be 3 buildings or just one over where the old telephone used to be. What I think you should do is consider the option that was not fully presented, and that's for a firehouse museum. Fire is of great interest, always has been in this community. When it was torn down many times by fires in the 1850s, why we had a bell tower that burnt down in 1852. So there's all kinds of interest in it now, even more than there was before. Just because a couple people or those involved in preparing screwed up, something that gives lawyers nightmares when it comes to missing deadlines, doesn't mean the rest of the public should suffer from what that was designed. And if they need more space, there is the old armory building that the county has. They could rent for, well, it's going for $1 a year. You could have a bidding war and get up to $10 a year. So there's all kinds of properties to do. But using those buildings that a Blue Ribbon Committee said was supported for a fire museum. I mean, Alan Kimbellic told me that it bothered him that A lot of the historic memorabilia there had been taken out. I don't know where. But that's why you need to look when you come back, make sure that you reassess that present lease, because obviously whatever the plans were years ago haven't materialized, and they're not going to be able to materialize. You're not going to be able to figure out how you could do all that restoration given the sad shape you now realize it's in. So I hope that's what you'll do next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk.
Sue Rodman, Placerville resident. I remember, along with Kirk, that several years ago we were talking about the ketchup and mustard buildings too, and what kind of shape they were in, and how much work that needed to be done. And I wonder, and now we've got the other building, the old telephone building, and last spring or so, they were saying it needed a new roof. Did it ever get a new roof? If not, why not? And is that part of what is planned now? Because I'm not making the connection. Also, that building was used as a homeless shelter last winter, and I was hoping that we could do the same thing this year. And it sounds like that's not going to happen either. So please tie all these loose ends together for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
I was unsure if that was the building that, in my only very partial knowledge, heard it was the former DA's office. But considering that we have still 600 homeless, and it's already the end of October, so the cold weather is already here, I continually come back to Solomon, who prayed for wisdom and yet ended up with 700 wives. He left his wisdom way behind and then 300 porcupines on top. But the wisdom that he prayed for once with the two women when only one baby survived is classic. There's so much wisdom in the Bible. For example, even though I've been reading the Bible and trying to live it as a very faulty struggler, but it's Matthew 5:41 that you were quoting for your first mile award, and that's great. I really appreciate your quoting the Bible. I know time's running, but I'm just hoping that the way Solomon said, well, this woman says it's the baby and it's her baby, and the other woman says, no, yours died, it's mine. And so Solomon prayed and came up with wisdom that wasn't linear, but it was perfect. And he said, cut the baby in half. I don't know what that application is for this building here, but when he said cut the baby in half, one woman said, oh, okay, that's fine. But the other woman said, no, let her have it. Let her have it. I want the baby to live. Well, we want arts and culture to live, and we also want the homeless to live. I don't know if a 2-month usage could actually work for the benefit of Placerville arts and culture. I play Rachmaninoff on the piano. It's his second concerto after he was going to give up after the first one didn't get much applause. I'm also a writer. I've written 7 books. So I believe in arts and culture. But maybe there's a solution here that could help the homeless, because the disgrace of our homeless having no place to go, it was openly stated from the dais by one of the brave souls amongst you that said, we realize we're 10 or 15 years behind on this homeless issue. Maybe there's a way to help the homeless just for those 2 months until it opens up. It's just a thought, but sometimes the thought can be a seed that produces a beautiful harvest. Keep up the good work. God bless you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, I'm going to close public comment on this and bring it back to the council. So just some questions that came up in regards to the roof for the annex building. Do you want to address that?
Yeah, I did not mention, I should have brought that up. I have that in my report, the written report, that we are reviewing the roof right now. We do believe that perhaps we will need to come back with you with a recommendation on that. We're looking at whether or not it can be repaired or actually needs a complete re-roof. Likely a new re-roof is the initial understanding we have, and we will be back at our next meeting once we have quotes on that to proceed. So,
okay. In regards to the building being used for a couple of months for the winter shelter, I am very sympathetic to the needs of the winter shelter. However, when we agreed to do that last year, it was very clear that that was a one-time situation and that there were plans for this building. Arts and culture have been out of a home for quite a few months now, and I don't think that it would be right to further keep them out of a place to work. Any other comments, discussion? I've got to say, a lot of these, and I just want to daylight a couple of things because I have a feeling that they're going to come up in the public. But, these are all a lot of unforeseen expenses that we didn't anticipate were is hard kind of in our budget to make them happen. However, in terms of doing the initial investigation into the walls of the building and the safety of the building, this is something that, we own those buildings. It's our responsibility to do this. We would have to do this no matter what we do going forward. So that's.
Could I say something too? This project has been proposed for years and years and years, and I have to tell you, I was the lone wolf for a long time and just really advocating to hang on to those buildings when there was a time when the council at that time, they were kind of swinging to, let's just get rid of them. And I just really fought hard to try to hang on to these because I do think they are a precious gem in our town, and they're so visible and they mean so much, and there's so much history there. So, but I want to back up. What was first proposed to us, and Terry is here today from the Arts Council, and she can back me up if I'm saying the wrong thing, but this whole project was presented, and it involved the courthouse. So it was the courthouse, the DA building, and the telephone company. And it was a wonderful project that Arts and Culture presented. And they were going to obtain a lot of funding that was going to take care of a lot of this. And unfortunately, the recession hit, all kinds of things happened. And then also, that's when the state, we lost the courthouse, and the courts took over the courthouse, and that took the courthouse out of the project. So it left the two buildings, and then the DA's office and the telephone company. So, and you're all pretty much aware of what has gone on in the last couple of years. The county awarded the old DA's office to another group that they favored their proposal over ours, and so that left us with 3 buildings. So here we are with ketchup and mustard and the telephone company. That's how all this happened. And it was just like a series of mishaps that kept happening. So, we started out with this wonderful project that everybody was in favor of, or seemed to be, and it's dwindled down to this, and I still am fighting. I've only got 2 more meetings, but I'm still fighting to hang on to those 2 buildings and see. I just think that so much could be done, and I would hate at this time now to lose that. And like Kara said, no matter what, even if we decided to sell them, we still have to fix them. And I mean, nobody's going to buy them and take on that responsibility. So I would just love to see this project go forth, and that's my spiel.
Thanks, Patty. All right. If there's no other discussion, I would entertain a motion on 12.1.
I'll move 12.1.
Second.
All right. We have a first and a second. Can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Saragosa?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye. Thank you. All right. Moving on to item 12.2. This item is in regards to a modular treatment unit and an underground replacement CIP for the wastewater treatment facility. And this report is by Rebecca Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. The item before you this evening is for approval of a services agreement with ERS Industrial Services in the amount of $573,310 for the modular treatment unit servicing, and also a recommendation of $250,000 contingency reserve for the amount of a total. Wait, that's not right. Hold on, sorry. For a total project budget of $630,000. Sorry, there was a typo in my notes. I apologize. The Hangtown Water Reclamation Facility, also known as the Wharf, is a tertiary water treatment plant that utilizes a series of process up to sterilization through the use of ultraviolet lights. Treatment includes the use of sand filters and clarifiers as well. The effluent water, which is the water that's released, is from the secondary clarifiers, is piped to the modular treatment units and the pressure filters, and is then cleaned as recycled water up to Title 22 compliance prior to the UV disinfection. The Wharf has a total of 2 MTUs and 4 pressure filters. Both MTUs have been in constant operation since the treatment plant's upgrade in 2008. MTU number 2 and the pressure filters were serviced in 2020. As part of routine, reoccurring, and usual work for the preservation or the protection of this publicly owned and operated facility, MTU number 1 is now due for servicing. Typically, this type of service is due every 8 to 10 years, and due to staffing shortages and supply chain delays, we now have arrived at 11 years since the last servicing, while still under constant operation. I'd like to commend our Wharf staff for their excellent efforts in maintaining the plant. They always implement it through a thorough approach to regular daily maintenance and amongst their other daily duties, and it allows the facility to benefit from the additional years between servicing. The contract before you is for the servicing of MTU number 1. It's the last filter to be serviced. And if this contract is awarded this evening, work is scheduled to begin early November, just ahead of the rainy season. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
I have a question. Did you say 630,000 versus the 573,000 that's in the?
Yeah, total budget. Sorry,
Okay.
It's adopting the additional budget appropriation for the Measure H fund reserve, and that brings the total budget up to 630,000 for the servicing contract.
Okay. All right. Prices have gone up
Indeed.
a lot,
Yes, ma'am.
and we have to do this. This is completely necessary.
I mean, if you ask my staff, yeah.
Okay. No,
There's actually a couple items that we, this happens every season heading into the wet months as we try to, sort of button down the hatches before the storm, right?
Yeah.
We do have another project that would be coming through, and I believe staff would agree that it's probably more urgent than this, which is the secondary clarifier number 1, the contract for that, the sweeping mechanism, and then also coating of the actual structure itself, painting basically, that will allow it to take on the corrosive material that it processes.
All right. The way Cleve described it, we have 2 of these, and basically
Yes.
one is not, the one that needs to be fixed is not working, and then.
Correct. This one is not doing great at all. The first one is in tip-top condition because we just went through this. It actually went through a complete overhaul, and we removed the sand, we removed the filtration media, And when we removed the filtration media, that was when we discovered that the underdrain system had completely corroded away. So back in 2019, we first started that effort in 2019. And then in 2020, once we actually got through and saw the corrosion issue, we added that extra work into it as well. That happened to be a situation where we had awarded the contract in 2019, and because of COVID, it took a while to get it scheduled. Once it actually got scheduled, it was pretty quick, but being that the world is back open now, the only thing we really are contending with are supply chain issues and scheduling for this. Yeah.
Okay. We get a lot of flack for how expensive water and sewer is in the city. And, items like this just kind of illustrate, we only have 33 households. 3,300, yeah, sorry. 3,300 households that we divide all these costs among. And we have a $40 million facility that the state forced us to make, essentially.
Correct.
And, we get a lot of comments like, why aren't we on EID? EID did not want to take on our infrastructure years ago when we pitched that to them. And they don't want to take it on now because it would cause their rates to go up. So I just, this is one of the top complaints that we get, and I just want to take every opportunity that we have to help people understand. We all feel the pain of the high rates, and every time I get the bill, I get an earful from my husband. But it is really, this stuff is expensive, and the last time we quoted it out, it was $380,000, and now we're looking at $630,000 in just a couple of years with prices going up. So these are, the tough parts of keeping the city running. So.
It is. It's obviously a wastewater treatment methodology, but it applies to bills too. The solution to pollution is dilution. So if we had more accounts, certainly that bill could be spread amongst more. And we always talk about different methods of getting more households involved too to help lower that cost. But in reality, the praise goes to actually the voters of Placerville who passed Measure H and L. Because there was this definitive moment where they knew that there wasn't going to be some magical fairy godmother from the government, from the feds, that would fix all these things. And although we do a phenomenal job of going after outside funding and grants to help soften the impacts of those costs, it is not lost on any of us here working for the city that how blessed we really are to have that.
Yeah, well said.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just had a question. Kara was talking about households. We have potentially 3 apartment buildings going to go in. So how much how do you use that and the money that we will be recouping from that to offset this at a later date?
So there's, and this is where I'm going to defer to Dave on the actual rate collection. And when we do these projects, we collect a capital improvement charge for sewer. And that capital improvement charge goes into the sewer enterprise fund, and it helps us fund projects like these. A lot of the projects that actually occur out at the wharf.
It'll be too late to help with this.
Correct.
Okay.
And then I will defer to Mr. Warren for the rate study information.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Rebecca Neves is correct that with every new connection, we're getting one-time money to cover our impact, buying stock in the company, if you will, as well as future improvements, and then the ongoing rate revenue to help pay for the debt service as well as improvements like this. The exact amount, I don't have that, but with each new connection, it helps. Yeah, thanks.
Can I add just quickly to that? So what that will equate to is we are in the process right now of looking at doing our next rate study for water and sewer. By doing this, adding additional accounts will help us keep that cost down when we review the rates. And other things we're doing, for example, we've brought up the solar project. We hope this coming year is funded and will go through. That's another big one that will help us keep those costs down. and will all be reflected when we do in this rate study that we do to help us keep any increases, if necessary, as low as possible. So.
And we refinance.
We just
the bond.
refinance, yeah.
We just refinanced the bond, correct? Yeah, that was another
Which
thing
saved us
to
quite
help
a
in
bit.
that
Yeah.
whole
A couple
process.
million, I think, wasn't
Yep.
there?
Yeah.
5 million.
5 million?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that's even better, isn't it? 5's better than 2. My question, just for my recollection, the 380,000, the initial 380,000 came out of our sewer enterprise fund. Is that right?
This project was funded, I believe, by a combination of several funding sources.
I didn't notice it in here, and was it?
Yeah, I mean, I apologize, it's not specifically listed in here, but if you care to go to the adopted fiscal year budget of 2020 and 2021, the CIP program budget, there's actually a page broken down where the project is essentially created. That's the birthing place of all of our CIPs.
Right.
And then that's how the staff's initial blush at how we can fund these improvements.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
All right.
No, I was just going to say, not only are we, is it a $45 million, wastewater treatment facility that we had to build and we're still paying for, that isn't like a one-time, fee of $45 million and then you don't pay it again. We have, ongoing capital costs just to keep that thing up and running, which is why we have this here today. So it's the gift that keeps on giving, because it's not as if $45 million is it's just that one set in stone thing. It's going to continue on, and like it's been mentioned, 3,300 accounts pay for the entire thing.
Yeah.
And there's no way around that unless we grow as a city.
And the alternative to building that facility in the first place was being fined $10,000 a day,
We were being fined $10,000 a day.
we were
which
already being
exceeds
fined.
what our payments for the facility are. So the city was stuck between a rock and a hard place, and
Yeah, and I
we're all-
apologize, I wasn't here during that, but my recollection, or, through various staff stories telling what had happened, was the state, I believe, waived the fines in lieu of us making the commitment to deliver upgrades to the facility that would put us in compliance.
Yeah, they did
So
after
there was grace extended
After
to us for
negotiating
that.
with them. John
Yes.
Driscoll did some negotiating.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. One of the things I always tell people, and it's, because we get this a lot. Why is things so much? And it's literally, it's ours. If you buy a house in the city, it's yours. You get your 1/3300ths of that sewer plant, and we have to pay for it. We have to pay for our roads, we have to pay for our parks, we have to pay. Now, there's grant funding, and there's, Measure H and Measure L to help out, but the reality is we own these things. It's up to us to take care of it, and we share the load. And if we charge people less for sewer, that means we're giving up somewhere else. It's a zero sum. I say this all the time. It's a zero sum game, and it's really hard to wrap your head around that sometimes. But you just can't wave a wand and reduce fees. And I think the reason we're all up here reiterating these things in different ways and saying the same thing is that we all get beat up pretty hard.
We do.
And we all want to say,
We do.
listen, people,
Well, there's
because
such,
it's tough.
there's such
Yeah.
ridiculous accusations.
Well, I mean, I've got to say,
know?
it's expensive. It
Yeah.
is. And
Yes.
I do feel for households. It is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is expensive.
It
but
is. But it
Yeah,
is.
I got a big, I've had a few people hit me up pretty hard, and I looked at my sewer bill and went, crap, that is expensive. Because I don't, right, sorry.
You don't pay yours?
Yeah, I honestly, I don't pay my bill, but I did look at it, and it is. And, I have it with my business, and I pay it.
Oh, my God.
In
Every time I pay
three different locations.
Yeah.
And it's tough. So, I mean, we all get it because we all live in the city, we all pay our bill, and it stinks. So I would like to move this item.
Did I open this up to the public?
Oh, yeah, I thought
not
you did.
yet.
Okay. I'd like to, we went off on a little bit of a tangent, but I do want, I try to take every opportunity that we can to let
Yeah.
the public know why, because we do hear about this a lot. So with that, let's open 12.2 up to the public. Please come on up if you have something to say.
Sorry, Measure H.
Sue Rodman, Measure H and Measure L Committee. We did upgrade our sewer plant. We did fight to get Measure H and Measure L to help with the costs of those things. When you have a car, You can pay me now or pay me later. When you have a house, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. If you need a roof, you better do it before it rains. And sewer plants are the same way. We can pay for it now or we can pay later. And if we pay later, it will be a lot more expensive. If you remember the floods we had not too long ago, we had a lot of damage to this sewer plant. And we had a lot of repairs we had to make. We're a lot better off if we get ahead of the game and get things done before the rains come so that it functions like it's supposed to and can take the amount of influx that it will have. Because when it rains, let's hope it does rain, but we need to have these things working. And saying, can we postpone it? Yeah, we can postpone it. And then watch how much more expensive it will be to do it next year. So I think we're far better off to go ahead and do our preventative maintenance. This is not really preventative maintenance. It's already a year overdue. So let's get it done and get it done now.
Thank you, Sue.
Again, I'm Max Storton, Placerville resident. I would agree with Sue that maintaining the water treatment plant is pivotal to this town's success, or city's success. And I think we lucked out last year, even though it was a terrible drought and it has a lot of awful consequences. It means that we didn't get any flooding happening or any pressure put on the water treatment center like we had the year before and the year before that. So, yeah, and predictions that I read certainly suggest that we're going to get a lot of rain this year. So I think the maintenance needs to be done.
Thank you, Mac. I hope you're right about the rain.
I do too.
Hey, I'm Sean Briggs again. So I've been contacted by a lot of people that on fixed incomes that are very worried about the whole sewer charge issue. You guys talked about the increased number of connections, spreading out that cost, but when can the residents actually see that result? Because they're worrying about having to move out of town because they can't afford to live here. So when would that be visible, and how much would it be?
Thank you, Sean. All right. Seeing nobody else stepping up, I will close public comment.
Mayor, if I may?
Sure.
Real quick, there was a question about the funding source for this project. So the original funding source of $380,000, $190,000 came from Measure H, and another $190,000 came from Measure L.
Okay.
So what we're proposing is raising the amount for Measure H from 190 to 440.
And Dave, just as a reminder, I know we had funding that came through that actually paid for anybody that was in arrears on their water bills.
Correct. And that funding was distributed to the ratepayers this last July. We also have the Low-Income Household Water Assistance Program, which is a one-time credit if they qualify. It's through El Dorado County Health and Human Services. We distributed a flyer in both the July and September bills with that information, and it's also on our website. The other thing I was going to say is the city has a Lifeline program. So if a customer is either a PG&E Care recipient or a AT&T Lifeline customer for landline service, they qualify for a 25% discount on their water and sewer bills.
So the follow-up question, though, is that we're going to be, we talk about the impact of the additional houses or apartment complexes that are coming on, and when will that happen? We'd have to do a nexus study to change our rates and figure out exactly how it's going to impact all of the taxpayers equally.
Yeah, there's a lot of magic that happens when we do a rate study. One is we look at our costs. Inflation right now is not good, but eventually it'll get better. We will assume a certain level of growth in connections. We'll be talking with Mr. Rivas and Ms. Neves about what kind of growth they're seeing in the horizon over the next 5 years. And also the solar project that Mr. Morris mentioned. That will cut our electricity costs in half. Right now we're paying over $600,000 a year. That'll save about $300,000 a year. So, and the refinancing of the bonds over time will save, like I said, $5 million over the life of the remaining 13 years.
So what you're saying is we've done quite a bit to help cut back the cost.
We certainly haven't. We're not done. We're going to keep turning over rocks and, as Rebecca says, sofa cushions.
Yeah, and I know, I don't have to attribute that a lot to our staff who've gone out
Absolutely.
and done the work and found the solar program, and Dave, that you've done the refinancing and saved a lot of money there. I don't want to toot our horn because we didn't do a whole lot other than approve the things that you brought for us, but you guys have done a great job of moving this forward and saving our city our taxpayers quite a bit of money, at least at some point in the future. So when is the Nexus study going to happen?
Well, that's funny you ask. We're actually going to bring it to the council on the 9th of November.
Okay.
For your consideration.
To do the study.
To do the study. So this would be a contract with Bartle Wells, who did the previous study, did an excellent job. Actually, this is the third study that they've done for the council.
Okay, I got a bunch of questions, but we'll defer until that you actually do that.
Kara, I just wanted to add, so Dave, to answer this gentleman's question, I don't think we're ever going to see the rates go down. We're just going to keep them from increasing a lot. Am I saying that correctly?
Off the cuff, I agree with that statement. Unfortunately, because everything goes up, $1 today is worth less than tomorrow, or it's worth more than $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. So naturally, the cost of things go up, and we have to cover those costs. With Measure HL, it reduces the impact on the sewer and water rates for capital improvements and debt service. And as the economy grows, right now it's kind of sputtering a little bit, but in good times, matter of fact, this last 3 years we've exceeded budget for both Measure H and L, and so that's created a reserve for projects that we didn't budget for, so we can do even more with those dollars. But again, Measure HL will help reduce, and also the current trend is I anticipate we'll be able to keep rates in the single digits, hopefully the low single digits, over the next 5 years. But we'll see what the study says.
And, included in those costs that a lot of times we kind of forget is that we have to have very knowledgeable people running that plant. We have to pay their salaries. They have to have vehicles, so all this has to be taken into, and I think sometimes we tend to forget those costs.
Right. And some of the chemicals that they use are petroleum-based, and as we know, everything petroleum is going up.
Right.
So,
if anyone's really bored, I'm happy to do a PowerPoint from 1978 through today that tracks Prop 13, the VLF transfers, Prop 98, the triple flip on the budget, and a lot of other things that leaves us as a city heavily relying on sales tax to be able to stay afloat, and why you see that type of growth in a lot of areas. So come hit me up if you want to hear about all that, because that's kind of the world that we live under.
Okay, one last thing before we kind of wrap this up. Since we have a bunch of several city council hopefuls in the audience, I do just want to take a minute to say Measure H and L, which is partly funding this, is a measure that was voted on by the residents of Placerville to fund our infrastructure. It is overseen by a citizen group. Sue Rodman is our citizen watchdog for all of these funds to make sure that they are being spent wisely, and we very much appreciate the work that she does to safeguard that money. Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion if anyone wants to make one.
Sure, I'll move it. 12.2.
I'll second it.
Wait. Yes, that's it. I'm staring at it.
All right, we have a first and a second. Regina, can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye, thank you. All right. Are we doing okay? Do we need a break? We good? Keep going? Okay. Moving on to item 12.3. This is the Green Means Go grant application. And City Manager Morris has this item.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. At your last council meeting, I mentioned that I was going to be bringing this forward. Green Means Go is a program established through SACOG. They received approximately a total of, I think it was $37 million for this program. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on what it is. You can ask Councilmember Zaragoza, or Vice Mayor Zaragoza, excuse me, for that if you'd like more detail on that. But they do have this grant program that is currently available for...
I'm going to interrupt you.
Okay.
Because I need to recuse myself on this one.
Okay.
My apologies. I have property, this is all up on Broadway, and I have property along there, so I am going to step out and enjoy some quiet moment in the back room, and see you in a bit.
Okay.
Bring this again.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. So, as you know, for the Green Means Go program was established by SACOG. Several months ago, staff submitted a proposal to them to establish a green zone on the Broadway corridor. The reason for that is we had been doing quite a bit of work from them. In fact, we're currently in a study with them that they have funded. It was a $100,000 study Mr. Rivas and I have been participating in for a consultant that is looking at creating additional housing on the Broadway corridor, primarily mixed-use housing that would be either above, below, or somehow connected to commercial businesses that are on the corridor. And so they are going through that process. They will come back. They've looked at specific properties that they will come back and present a feasibility study to property owners to tell them how they could or move forward with potentially additional housing that would be a plus and an improvement to their property. So that process is going on. We also had another study we completed a couple of years ago, Pierre, that looked at the corridor and improvements done to the corridor that we could do to the corridor just to improve the aesthetics and et cetera, landscaping, signage, et cetera, that could improve it. And all of that was done in accordance with the Broadway multimodal plan that was done years ago by businesses and owners up on Broadway. So what you have before you tonight is a request to approve our application to Green Means Go. And as to background a little bit more, as you know, over the last about 3 years now, we've been working on a broadband program to provide fiber to the home and businesses throughout the city. We completed our broadband strategy a couple of years ago and adopted that. And we have that plan ready to implement now, and this is part of that implementation process. So what we're requesting tonight in this is allow us to submit an application to SACOG for the Green Means Go program to provide broadband fiber to the Broadway corridor. That's too close, those two words together. Broadband fiber to the Broadway corridor. It would run actually from the established hub that we've done in our initial work on broadband, which would be actually located next to this facility, in the back of this facility. And then it would run east up to approximately the end of the grocery outlet center. And it would connect all the businesses and properties between there and Mosquito Road. We are looking at this initially to be able to connect those properties between here and Mosquito Road also. That's kind of a question we're still working on and working with SACOG on how we implement that. The only question there is that area is actually outside of the green zone. The green zone only goes from Mosquito Road to approximately Smith Flat Road on Broadway. So we want to submit this application. We've been doing a lot of work with our consultant. Rebecca Neves, our city engineer, has been doing a lot of work helping us with it. Cost estimates, putting everything together. And I think we have a good application. We've submitted it on a draft basis to SACOG and got good comments back from them, and they've encouraged us to move forward with the application. Our total application, or the total amount of the project, would be $3.8 million. We are requesting council tonight to allocate an additional allocate $250,000 of ARPA funding toward the project. So we would it's about 3.5 million that we would ask for in the grant, and then the additional 250,000 that would come from us. We're noting also, as you know, we have the Broadway Sidewalks project that is coming up next year, and that provides us a great opportunity to integrate this project with that. In fact, there's significant cost savings in being able to do both those projects at the same time. That provides additional matching funds that we will include in the application to note to SACOG, and that's about $4.5 million project, Rebecca? Or is it more?
Yes, and that's the combination of both the Broadway sidewalks and the Broadway maintenance project.
Right. So with those two together, we'll show those as a match toward this project, which gives us a lot of assistance in hopefully in being more competitive with the project. I want to emphasize that the Green Means Go project has some goals, and one of them is to increase housing. Another one is to decrease vehicle miles traveled. And Michael, help me out. What's the third one? I need to look it up here. Do you remember what it is?
No.
Anyway, those are the two main ones. They want us to increase housing and to decrease vehicle miles traveled. And so one of the things that we're working hard on is how we can meet the requirement of the housing. If we add housing on Broadway, I think we can have a good argument that we can decrease vehicle miles traveled, because we do have the transit center, which is right next to the corridor, which provides transportation down to Sacramento or throughout the county, wherever people may need to go. Yes, thank you. So let me read that real quick. Accelerate infill residential development, reduce vehicle miles traveled, foster inclusive communities, and affirmatively further fair housing, deliver cost-effective projects, and leverage partnerships and policy match. So anyway, those are the goals of the Green Means Go program. So we think we have a competitive application, and we want to, this will really give us a hands up in starting our broadband fiber program. This will get the initial infrastructure in, and from here it will allow us to move out and expand into other areas of the city, and hopefully eventually accomplish our goal of providing fiber to the entire city. So the action we're requesting from you tonight is to basically approve the application. The resolution approves the application, but then also we are asking you to liquidate the $250,000 from the funding that you allocated to the homeless program in the county, $250,000 of the $287,500 that you allocated, and then allocate that $250,000 as a match for this project. If we are not awarded, that funding will not be used, and would go back into the pot that could be used for other things. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on the project.
I'll just add a little bit of extra, a little bit more. I think this is probably a one-time funding source. We fought in the legislature to get this funding for Green Means Go with the SACOG lobbying team and a lot of local elected officials from around our 6 regions. Because we're going to probably see budget cuts coming up, and we're probably looking at a deficit in the next fiscal year, it's not likely that projects like this that we're able to get some money put together will come forward. So I think we have a unique opportunity for these funds that are there. And there has been interest. There was a first round already for planning that was about $3 million or so, and then, so we're in on the second round of this. But I do think it would be transformative for this area. When you look at it in conjunction with the $15.5 million that we were able to get for Placerville Drive, we're talking about really putting a ton of investment into both bookends of the city, and maybe not being able to see that type of funding again for some time.
Right.
So again, I just think it's a good. It's a good time. I think it's a good investment of that $250,000 in ARPA. If we're successful, I kind of feel like we're placeholding it, because if we don't get it, we get that money back and we can reinvest it again. But I feel like it's a good multiplier if we're successful on this. And I do think we're going to be. I think we have a very good application on this, and I think we'll be very competitive going up against our counterparts throughout the SACOG region. Thank you.
Mayor, if I could just emphasize, I provided you another copy of, an updated copy of the application tonight.
Right.
It also is still in draft form. We will finalize that tomorrow, working with our consultant and staff.
Okay.
And it's due on Thursday, so we plan to submit it by end of day tomorrow, so we have it in on time. So.
We talked about this data table on page 4, where it's asking about like zoning for housing and all that.
Right.
Are the fields that you're allowed to fill out a number box, or is it text? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So if you look at the two bottom columns that are zeros,
yeah,
those are actually calculated under this Greens Means Go data tool that SACOG has established. So we just go on there and look at that and click the number that they have already in the table. We don't have a choice. The other one in the first box, that's supplied by us, and we don't. That's why we put the 0% in there, but then I put the clarifying language that there is the opportunity to get up over the 30 if we have a density bonus that we have available in our program.
Would it be completely accurate if we, instead of putting 0 there, if we said 100% with the density bonus?
I'd have to talk to Pierre. I'm not sure we could achieve 100% in the properties.
You know what I'm saying? Just to get rid of,
the 0.
Because it is 36 with the density bonus.
Sure.
You know.
Let me see what I can do there. Maybe we can adjust that and figure out a way to get that through. It didn't actually call for this extra language in there, but I tried it to see if I could, and it did go in. So, maybe even just removing the 0% and just leaving the language in there. Putting maximum is 20 per acre, but with a density bonus, you can achieve 36, something like that. I can work with Pierre on that. We can
lead with the density bonus.
Yeah, just the density bonus.
Yeah,
that sounds better than the 0%.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
Do you know when the funding would be awarded?
March of 23.
Okay, so you would know by March if we would have this money coming back to the city for other purposes.
Correct.
Which aligns well with budget cycles and all that.
It does, and it also works fairly well with our sidewalk project. The timing of that, we've been kind of coordinating with Rebecca and making sure timing-wise that those can work together, because that's the key to this being successful.
Okay, so if we were awarded this grant, this would really jumpstart the broadband project. It would spur us to create the broadband utility and kind of do that whole thing, which is great.
Yep.
Cool.
Kara, I had a conversation with Rebecca the other day, and I'm not sure that a lot of folks understand the importance of broadband, and we keep talking and talking and talking about it, and I'm not, and I liked what you said, and I was thinking maybe you ought to share this, and then along those lines, this the award that we just had for Placerville Drive, is there any thought of broadband coordinating with that project? Or is that asking too much?
You're in my head.
Oh, okay.
No, so the comments were, improving affordability of housing. Well, if we don't have the ability to influence, either rent or the sale price that a seller has chosen to place their house for sale, where we can help is, things like where we refinance bonds for $5 million to try to find ways to keep our rates down and do solar projects and do broadband projects. The cost that was proposed in the 2021 broadband master plan that was adopted by City Council approved a estimated monthly bill of about half of what fiber is offered at currently in the city of Placerville. And it's not just the mindset of we're reducing, I'm thinking of like household budgets. It's not enough to just reduce your mortgage when you can look at your utilities and you can scale back on
Why do we need broadband?
We need broadband because it helps the affordability of people with their other bills besides mortgage. So we're talking if they can work from home, that means that's gas they're not putting in their car and they're able to save money that way. That means that if somebody is attending Sac State, they don't have to drive from Placerville all the way to Sac State if there's an online option for the class, and they can save that money and time, and then that allows them to go, work more hours to gain more money to pay for their bills and have a more affordable lifestyle and things like that.
And the hospital?
And the hospital, yeah. I mean, so the hospital's actually been working on doing their own fiber project, but there's a lot of opportunity for the redundant connection. Anything electric or communications or water, you really want to have it set up as looped systems. And that looping is, it allows for the contingency if something gets cut somewhere inadvertently, you still have communication backup in that loop system, or you still have water service in that loop system. This is no different. And we do have some really good opportunities. The state of California is pushing forward their middle mile projects to bring broadband to communities, and there is a lot of opportunity for us in this project too to do that connection to save money on this project. We're already looking at how we can deliver this as a cost-effective project with Broadway and with Placerville Drive. That wouldn't be any different. We partner with Caltrans on all kinds of improvements around here.
And another thing, as far as like economic development, it allows a lot of home businesses to operate.
Yes.
And we have a lot of that, and it would really, I think, it would really help that too. I know that was one of the things that we talked about when I was going over to Auburn to all those meetings, and they were really pushing for Highway 80, but we certainly need it over here too for the home businesses and schools. School kids. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of, because we keep talking about broadband, and people that don't have it or maybe don't even need it, they kind of haven't looked into what it's all about. So thank you.
It's important, I got to say. I know that there's, a lot of older folks, not to stereotype, but a lot are probably not,
well, they're not going to
feeling
use
the
it.
need
Exactly.
for high-speed internet,
Right.
but most people my age and younger are using like the internet for all of their TV. Cable is kind of gone at this point, and all of their phone services and video conferencing now, which uses a lot of bandwidth, and
Right.
And just being able to carry on business and have multiple people in the family all using it at the same time, which is now, even like kids at school, elementary school, middle school, are using a lot of internet,
Right.
And to have multiple people working from home and attending school and all that, it requires some speed. It's definitely going to be like necessary for the future. So, one point that I want to make, there's obviously, we all know that there's a lot of homeless issues on Broadway, and we've been working hard to try to reduce those. But what really needs to happen to make it, for long-term solutions, is to have investment in that area and to see people walking it and using it, and businesses that are open with lights on. That's what's going to long-term make that a more attractive area with fewer blight issues and homelessness issues.
And encourage more businesses to open up.
Right, and it's
in
kind
that
of a
area.
chicken and an egg thing, because right now it's not in great condition and people don't want to invest there, and then because people aren't investing there, it just is self-perpetuating. But cities, we don't build buildings, we don't do that. We don't build housing. All we can do is stuff like this to encourage
Right.
private businesses and to make that investment in our communities, so that we can reduce blighted areas. And I mean, that's really what the long-term solution is. So I'm super supportive of this project. In terms of the ARPA money, so we spent quite a bit of time at the last meeting discussing this. So 250 out will reduce our current nest egg to what?
I think it'll be close to 150, but we still have the 196 if we don't use for fuel reduction that can
Okay.
be added into that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I apologize. I meant to include, Dave gave me a new sheet showing what we had in the ARPA funds, and I failed to
And
include
what
it
was
in your
it?
packet.
Say it again. I didn't.
So we have three. We have the 196 for veg management, the 50,000 potentially from the water.
It's the water and sewer assistance program.
Assistance program.
That never happened. because of the new
63,000
programs.
we identified potentially from the Lions Park Pavilion. And then the 287,500. Those are the pots of money that potentially could be reallocated that you identified, and that's the way we showed them. I apologize. I'll send this form out to you, the spreadsheet that Dave prepared on that. So.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. I will open this. Have I opened this? I have not opened this up. Okay. I'll open this up to public comment.
Thanks. Paul Godwin, Placerville resident. Thanks, Council and Mayor Taylor, Mr. Morris, for bringing this. And some of what I was going to speak about has been shared already, and just speaking to the benefits of broadband other than my personal Netflix habit. And that is, as an educator, that, as Mayor Taylor mentioned, most of our students are now doing work that requires use of the internet. There is a national movement called Digital Equity, which is something that our town can absolutely take advantage of in addition to this kind of program. And there are 42 million Americans who don't have any access to broadband. So for the reasons being stated, education, and I actually would differ about the comment about our seniors not taking advantage. I think, we're, as has been mentioned, we're one of the oldest counties in the state. We have a large, population of boomers, and we're just going to be getting older if we're lucky. So I think we will be taking advantage of it. So there is the Digital Equity Act. It's a $2 billion fund, federal fund, that we absolutely can take advantage of, and this is definitely not going to be, the only money that we could go for to provide that kind of equity. So, and I love the way it's hand in glove potentially with infill or providing some affordable housing in these corridors, and making our town even more attractive for some new citizens. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul.
Good evening. Ryan Carter, Placerville resident. If I could just get a couple of quick clarifications. This $3.8 million, is it to build a backbone of sorts that could then be expanded to the rest of the city, or will this $3.8 million just service this one area and then other areas will be similarly priced for the same geographical area? And then once this system is in place, who administers the building maintenance? Is it a city-run operation? Is it a public-private partnership? And if that's the case, it sounds like you're going to be undercutting by half a private business that had to pay for all their own infrastructure by using public funds. If I get some clarification possibly on those, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Hi, Sean Briggs again. A few questions on that, partially tying into what Ryan asked as far as the management of it. But one thing that came to mind, sort of along the lines with the whole sewer price issue, we've got something here that even though most of it's coming from outside funding, we've got a little bit that is coming from our city's funding, and it's going to be disproportionately hitting all of the people that are on fixed incomes that are least likely to make use of the service. And so has there been any study as far as with this, instead of going and providing a undercut price for a service that most of the people that are making use of it are already paying the market price for, to being able to actually get revenue back into the city to be able to drop the price of some of our other services? You know, if we've got this infrastructure and we're going and renting out bandwidth to other providers, and that's also going to competitively drop the rate of those providers because they're going to be competing on different infrastructure. So has any study as to those impacts been done? Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right. There's a couple questions, you know, in terms of, is this going to form the backbone? I mean, I'm assuming that it's not going to cost $3.8 million to run every line of fiber in the city.
This will primarily install the backbone. Well, it will establish the backbone infrastructure. As I mentioned, there's a equipment hub that will be built here at this building, actually behind this building is what we're currently looking at, that will establish the initial framework, the equipment, the software, et cetera, to run the fiber network. This will be a city-run program, but I'll tell you right now, I'm not looking at hiring city employees to do it. We will contract out that service for the maintenance and operation of that. That would be a big task to take that on internally, but there are companies that we can contract with to run that for us. The initial cost, the biggest portion of this is, or a lot of it anyway, is that initial backbone cost. But it is providing, as I mentioned, the goal is to provide this to encourage infill housing on Broadway. So it is proposed to provide that service, that initial connection point to those services on Broadway, both public or both residential and commercial in that area. And it presents an interesting issue for us to discuss in what we do going forward. I mean, they will be paying their monthly cost for the utility going forward, which will go in and will help fund the operations and maintenance of that. How we move into other areas is going to be a good question. How we hope to get additional grant funding. Paul brought up the digital divide or digital equity. Thank you. I was thinking of a different program. We are monitoring that program closely. It's interesting because that program has some criteria also that talks about, you know, you have to go to the underserved and unserved, and we have just enough in Placerville to make it difficult sometimes to say that we meet that criteria to be able to hit those pockets of the unserved and underserved. But we definitely want to continue to look at additional grant funding to continue this process throughout the city. And then from there, we'll go forward and see what other options we have. The initial plan was that this would be financed entirely through districts and et cetera that would be funded by the residents to do it. So, for example, I will tell you our initial look was that it would be about $4,000 per unit to establish the initial connection, and that could be funded over a period of time, and even with that, it was looked at as about $60 a month to be able to fund that over a period of time. So still fairly reasonable for the type of service that you would be getting compared to what you can get today. That's for 1 gig service up and down. So it is a very robust system, and it's an open access system. In other words, we will not be running the ISPs. We'll invite ISPs to be on our system. And the way this system is run, it is open so that any of them, when they sign up, you can choose which ISP you use, and you can switch actually from day to day. If you don't like the one today, you can switch the next day to a new one. So it's a pretty robust and good system going forward.
And the idea is that drives down costs by increasing
Correct.
competition, which right now there's not competition.
There's the competition.
You know, there's one provider for an address, maybe 2 if you're lucky, but there's really
And,
not a lot.
you know, too, we've been told time and again that there's and I think even I heard it through the Chamber of Commerce, that there's a lot of businesses would like to come here, but they won't because we don't have that. So it's an economic boost too.
Absolutely,
That's
yes.
really, going to, that we have to look at. So Cleves, I'm going to use my building as an example. I have, units. So if people were to come in, I don't have to handle it, do I? I mean, it would go through, or do you know?
We would probably work with you on the initial infrastructure to get it to your building, but then whether or not they want to sign up for that, your individual tenants, we would work with them on that. So, yeah.
And when we originally looked at the feasibility, as you mentioned, it was like $4,000 per household to hook up. And even with, and that would be funded over a period of time.
Sure.
And even with that, the feasibility worked out that it would be significantly cheaper. Now there is tons of infrastructure dollars and grant money available so that we'd probably be able to offset a lot of those costs.
That's the goal, yeah.
We've spent many hours doing presentations and discussion about this. So if anybody would like a deep dive into this system, it's available at the city website, Cleve, correct? Under where can they
Actually,
find?
we have our own website on this. It's connectplacerville.com. So if you go to that, you can review the whole program. You can also download our broadband strategy is on that site, or broadband master plan, I think we call it. So.
Okay.
Yeah, and to the one point Mr. Briggs brought up about competing with people who are already there, I don't think we have broadband to Broadway already. I thought that we only had broadband to Main Street so far.
Yeah, I'm not sure what is available up on Broadway. I'd have to look at that.
Well, I know it's not available
I
at
don't
my
think
house
we have
yet,
it
and I
now.
keep calling.
Is it? Okay.
But it would be multiple service providers competing on the same infrastructure, and that's why the
It wouldn't go
prices-
through AT&T like some.
It
of-
wouldn't. Yeah, it would, and that's what would drive the prices down
Right.
for customers. Okay, so would anyone like to make a motion on this? Or?
I would.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Ms. O'Connell, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas will be noted as recused. Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, council reports from other agencies. El Dorado County Transit?
We have not had a
Do you want
meeting
to bring
since...
Council? Oh, is he coming?
Oh yeah, we need Dennis back.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
Okay. Almost forgot about you back there. All right, El Dorado County Transit Authority.
We have not had a meeting since the last meeting. Our November meeting is canceled, so December 1st will be the next meeting.
All right, thank you. El Dorado Transportation Commission.
The same report, except with the exception of what you presented tonight. Woody sent us, he's just really happy about it, and so we all are.
The large Placerville
The large pot of gold
Drive, yeah.
Placerville Drive.
All right, LAFCO.
We have not had a meeting since the last council meeting. Our meeting is canceled tomorrow, so the next meeting will be December 7th.
Okay. SACOG.
Can I just quickly, sorry, Jackie, can I mention regarding LAFCO, I got a notice today that we are coming up for our review, the city, this
Yes.
coming year, and they're going to connect us to the consultant that will begin. So our municipal service report, the MSR, is coming up this next year. So we'll be working with our consultant on that and bringing you back reports between Jackie and Patty and I. So
Is that an opportunity to expand and annex?
that is the time that you would look at that
Okay.
in terms of expanding your sphere and or your city limits. So yes, this
Okay.
is the opportunity that we would look at that.
So that will be
Yeah, so in the
kind of a big deal.
In the next year, they're looking at the city of Placerville, the city of South Lake Tahoe, and the Cameron Park CSD. So those
Okay.
three will be reviewed this next coming year.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good.
Mayor, if I may, I just want to add that staff has been working with LAFCO staff, and we will be looking critically at those areas where we would want to expand our sphere of influence.
Okay, great. Thank you, Pierre. All right, SACOG?
We did meet, and we essentially went over this Green Means Go application with folks, and then we had a couple of presentations from our like a sister agency in Utah, or their MPO. But that's about it.
Okay. Pioneer.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I didn't get overlooked this time. So we had a meeting. It's really hard to talk about energy because it is so complex, and to report back what's going on in these meetings is challenging. But the suffice to say, they are working very hard to keep our energy costs down, to stabilize our energy purchasing processes. And for instance, we did a prepayment transaction that involved all sorts of entities in the government as well as private sectors that were Goldman Sachs and other entities that would you prepay for your energy. The energy costs, you get a stabilized energy rate. When you prepay for the energy, you're going through a GPA, which gets it a tax-free exempt, which cuts you down by about 6% on the cost of your energy over 30 years. But there's no liability, so there's only an upside. But the tax savings is good for the first 5 years, and then it fluctuates. But it's guaranteed for the first 5 years, and there's no downside to it because the risk is all borne by Goldman Sachs and not by the energy company. And this is something that's been going on in the energy business for many years with liquid gas or natural gas. And it's only just recently come into play with the CCAs, or community choice aggregate organizations that access available funds and mechanisms to stabilize their energy purchasing. So they are doing a lot of things to improve and support our community, and they hire some really smart people that do this stuff. And so that was one of our things that we went over. And they are working on a strategic priorities, residential customer outreach. So we should be seeing a little more from them. They've done a lot. They've showed up at the fair. They've been at a variety of different events where they put up a booth and answer questions. They're working with solar vendors to outreach and find out what else they can do to work with them, real estate associations and building associations. So they're working hard to get out in the community, get their voices heard, and share their message, and hopefully build our base even a little more.
Aren't they also bringing in 2 more communities?
Well,
or trying to?
Well, one has delayed and deferred for a year, and another one is coming in, and I don't remember which one it is. Grass Valley. Yeah, in Auburn, Nevada City, and one of them has decided to delay because they have something else going on their ballot this year, and they didn't want to create any confusion with it all.
So the what's behind that, though, the more they get, the better.
It's not as much as you think, but it does give us some purchasing power. We deal in the hundreds of millions of dollars in energy purchases and back and forth. Sure. So it's a rather interesting.
I have to tell you, I hate my bill. It's so hard to figure. I'm sitting there, it's like it's so different. I guess we'll get used to it. I hope.
If you have any questions, and this is really important, if you have any questions when you call Pioneer Energy, somebody literally picks up the phone. And they talk to you about it. It's not like you're going through 5 different buttons on your phone, waiting on for 30 minutes or whatever when you call PG&E. They literally pick up the phone. Those people, we talk to them at our meetings. They can help you answer, and they can show you. They can, if you give them your bills, they can go over them with you and tell you exactly what the savings is and why it is better or not better for Pioneer Energy. And they'll tell you straight up, this isn't good or it is good. Okay. A lot of % of the times it is. So,
all right.
That's it.
Thank you.
That's all.
Good report.
You're welcome.
Placerville Fire Safe Council?
I really don't have a report tonight other than what Vice Mayor Zaragoza shared with us. No, that was fine. I'm glad. Everything is looking great in their favor. There's a lot of grants out there, and they're taking advantage of it, and the council's working really hard. It's a very dedicated group, so Maybe next meeting I'll have more detail.
All right, thank you. And the 2x2 has not met. Opportunity knocks.
We should be meeting next week, or 1st of November, around that time.
All right. I'll open these reports up to the public if anyone would like to comment on anything under 13. Seeing none, I'll bring it back for item 14, requests for future agenda items. None? All right. City manager and staff reports. Cleve, do you have anything to report? Okay. Upcoming items, there's the water and sewer rate study, adoption of fire code, PPOA, MOA, chamber marketing presentation, wildfire mitigation presentation. There's some interesting stuff coming up in the next couple of meetings. So with that, I will adjourn this meeting at 7:20.
Nice.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thanks for being here.